Recording, start. Welcome back to the Thinking Out Loud podcast. We are your hosts, Tesh
and George.
And today we're going to be doing part one of a two-part series on the lessons that we've learned in our 11-year relationship.
Yes.
Ooh. Okay, so basically we've discussed and written out 8 lessons that we feel are really valuable and things that we've learned a lot from in our relationship and what has contributed to us obviously doing something right, to the fact that we're still together 11 years later and enjoy each other's company and communicate well and, you know, want to actually hang out together, which I feel
like being close
like
to
we
each other.
actually like
we
each
hang
other.
out and
like
stuff.
We actually want to hang out, which is so crazy.
Yeah.
So I think that says a lot. I just want to preface this that every single relationship has issues. There is no such thing as a perfect relationship because there's no such thing as perfection. And a relationship is ongoing work. It takes ongoing communication and the willingness to be vulnerable, to show up, to be authentic with your partner and with yourself. And I think when done with humility and respect, you can have a really beautiful, flourishing relationship that helps both people grow.
Yes.
Individually and as a couple. So we're very lucky to have that, right?
Yes. We are very lucky to have that. Yes.
Our relationship's the best. You love me.
Yes.
So essentially we've written out 8 different lessons and we're going to be doing 4 of them today and then 4 of them in our next video.
So 4 in this episode and 4 in the next.
Absolutely.
Yes.
That's how you count.
Just a quick side note. These lessons are things that we have learnt and we think are pretty attributable to most relationships. Obviously, every dynamic is different and these things might not work for each person, but they are quite general and we think that for the most part, these are very good sort of guides and things to be aware of in your relationship that can help you have a stronger bond with your partner and ensure that communication is good. And
I think also, like, we're not trying to teach anything or be preachers.
We're not guidance counselors or preachers.
No.
Or professional relationship havers.
No, or professional relationship coaches. We just want to share our own experiences and what we've learned, because obviously I think that we're doing something right. So just want to share our own insights and things that we've learned as being a conscious couple. And what does it mean to be a conscious couple? Essentially, it just means that you're taking every single day as an individual in your own life and as a couple consciously and intentionally and being very aware of your own subconscious biases and attachment issues and baggages, because we all have them, right? We all have issues. We all come from different experiences. And so we all have the capacity to love and to be loved, and we all deserve that. And so I think being a conscious couple means that you're consciously willing to show up and discuss all of those things and make changes where necessary. And
have those open discussions.
And have those open discussions, because I think we say it a lot, communication's important, but
when it comes to actually communicating, people don't really do it. What is real communication?
What is good communication too? That's not the point of this particular episode. No. We could probably delve into that another time.
Yeah, we should.
Lesson ick. 1. The key to growing together versus growing apart is clarity on core values. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Yes. So, yes, I do.
Okay.
Clarity on core values is a very important lesson, I think, in relationships and in romantic and friendship relationships, platonic relationships, because I think, you know, even just having a very even a very direct conversation about your core values can be very valuable. We've had those conversations before where we wrote down our core values and just saw which ones aligned, and we had our personal ones and saw which ones those aligned, and then we came up with some, which I guess the ones that aligned became sort of our shared core values.
Yeah, like collective values.
Yeah, and I think it's really valuable to go through those, because you get to know more about your partner and more about yourself as well. It's very rare that you actually write down and think about, what are my core values? You know, you might have an idea in your head, just sort of like a feeling of what you think you value. But then when you look up some examples or some prompts or something, and then you spend some time really thinking about it, I think it's very valuable individually and as a relationship to know which ones you share, and then you can work on those and get to know each other more.
Core values are the values that you implement and instill and live by in your life. So these values don't change. They don't chop and change, and one day you're very passionate about this thing and then the next day you're not. It's not obviously not a core value. So the way that you can as an individual be more aligned and take aligned action and be the person that you want to be is when you have clarity on your own core values. And then obviously like George said, how you bring that into the relationship and make sure that you both share common core values. If you're building a life together, you want to make sure you're on the same path, right? That doesn't mean
value the same
and
things.
you value the same thing. So that doesn't mean that you need to be the exact same person. No, but for example, if one person's core value is sustainability, that's my first thought that I had. If someone's core value is they want to live a sustainable life, they want to have the least amount of impact as they possibly can, and the partner that they're with doesn't. And it doesn't also mean that they mean the opposite, that they're like, I love living, I'm very passionate about living unsustainably.
It's rare that it's like an opposite one.
It's rare that it's an opposite.
It's more that like
they don't
care at all. And if say for example, as an example, we'll stick with sustainability. If Tesh had a core value of sustainability and I didn't, there's nothing explicitly wrong with that. But where like trouble can arise is if I don't care about her core value and don't value that. So if she has that as a core value and I don't, but I can live in alignment with that for the sake of her, then I think that's the point in doing these core values. You know what they are, and you can respect them and value them and work with them, because then trouble arises when she's like, oh, I have sustainability like as a core value and I don't give a fuck about recycling and I never learn to do it and I don't care. Then that's an issue.
That's true.
You can help. If that's why it's good to know these things, because you can treat your partner in respect of their core values. Obviously, you probably wouldn't meet each other if you had none matching. But if for some reason you did that and you had none matching, then you might not be very compatible.
So I think it's like you don't have to have the exact same core values. You just need to be willing to come to the table and respect your partner's core values. Mm-hmm. But also, I think that you do need clarity on what your core values are so that your values aren't clashing. Because if someone's very passionate about something and for someone else that's not important and they're taking they put a lot of emphasis on that in their life, then I just feel like it's at the end of the day, it just comes down to compatibility.
Yeah.
So for example, like veganism is such an easy example for me personally, because veganism or sustainability or being mindful of what I eat or being mindful of how I consume things is important to me. And if that's not important to you and you continue to consume the things that you do and you want to do, I can't expect you to change your ways to meet my core values, because then that's not in alignment with your core values.
Yeah.
So it would be wrong, and it would make me feel like a burden, or that you would then, it could also lead to like resentment. So like how you mentioned, like, oh, you show up for your partner and you respect that. Yes, you do respect your partner's core values, but if your core values aren't there, that's not important to you in your life, then you're going to continue doing this, and it's going to build it not will 100%, but it can build resentment, because you're like, I've been doing this for this person because this is so important for them. And so if that person then doesn't do something maybe back, you're going to use that as I've done all these things for you because this was important to you, it was never important to me. Maybe you just aren't compatible. Maybe we hold on to relationships that aren't good for us because of that. Which is why it's so important to have those conversations about core values, so you can identify those early on in the relationship. I think you need to continue to discuss them. So it's not just like okay guys, we're dating, what are your core values, let's do that, let's get in, like, let's lock in, let's go to this meeting, and then you never talk about it again. But
First date be like,
what are your core values? No, I actually think that's important. I genuinely think first date you need to be talking about your core values.
It kind of has to be like almost. You have like an interview.
I actually think it needs to be an interview, because it
kind of is in like a really like in like behind the scenes. That's what it is. You're meeting them, getting to know them.
If you're going and dating because you want to develop a long-term and a long-term relationship, if you're just dating for fun, then just have fun. But if you're dating, core
values don't matter that much.
Pardon?
Core values won't matter that much in just dating and fooling around.
Exactly.
But I did want to mention this is good advice. Generally, you don't need, like, even if you're single, just go like thinking to yourself, what are my core values, and like having the time to think about that, I think is valuable.
Why do you think that's important?
Because sometimes you can feel like you don't know what you care about or what you want, and I think that you don't know who you are. And I think that is one step towards sort of answering that question and knowing yourself
Agree.
better.
Yeah.
So knowing and sometimes you have a feeling of what it is, but you need to know, like sit there and think about it and write it down, and that is very helpful, I think.
How can you know what you want in a relationship if you don't know who you are and you don't know what you're
How do you
about?
know who to look for? How do you know who to be compatible with if you don't even know who you are?
Who you are, exactly. So I think you're really right, and I think that's that's a practice that you need to do all the time. And there's a lot of really great journal prompts for it too. Like even if you just Google like core values, and it comes up with a list, and then you do like journal prompts, whether you do that alone or you can do that with your partner and sit down and have those conversations.
Yeah.
It's really, really, really valuable.
I agree.
Yeah.
Before we move on to the next one, I did want to mention, because you said something at the start of this about your core values don't really change.
Yeah.
And that is kind of true. I feel like they can evolve and develop, and they might change. Although I might be wrong, but I was just thinking, the example we talked about veganism.
Yeah.
Like, we both weren't vegans
No, exactly.
from the start. And it was something... So it's a huge shift for me in a way. If I think about, when I used to see what vegans are doing, I used to think that's crazy. Like, that's insane.
So did
it's
I.
so extremist to be like that.
So did I.
So I don't know if I would say veganism was like... it definitely wasn't a core value of mine.
I don't even think
But
veganism can be a core value.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. I was like, and I don't think it actually is a core value.
Yeah.
At all. So that's why I was saying I could be wrong. What I was getting at is that veganism is an expression of core values that we hold. And so we weren't always vegan, but we always had these core values of compassion, like compassion for animals.
Compassion and care for other species or other people, other beings was a core value of ours. Going vegan was just an expression of that.
Yeah.
And we learned that. So what you're trying to say is that, because I was saying that your core values are always the same, and you were saying that core values don't always stay the same, but I think you realize what you were actually trying to say is that they do stay the same. They just express themselves differently based on the things we learn in our lives and how we learn and grow. That's why introspection and understanding yourself is so important, because when you are aligned with yourself, you will find a partner that is aligned with you. But when you don't know yourself, you're going to attract people that don't actually live by
your core values, even though you don't know them explicitly, but they're in you, and there's something can feel off about the people that you're with and that you're spending your time with. And you're not sure why, but you're like, oh, I don't feel like we're like clicking, and you might never have wasted, like I say wasted, but yeah, you might never have like spent your time with this person if you knew yourself better. You would know that this person is not the right person for you.
Yeah, and I think that's such a good point around like knowing that something feels off, but not knowing what it is, and then not being able to make those changes for when you meet a new person in a new relationship. When you have clarity on your own core values, you will grow together, and those you'll build a life together on the foundation of those core values, and I think that's the most important thing.
Knowledge is power, and knowing your own core values and your partner's core values is really powerful for your relationship.
Yeah. Okay, so that's lesson number 1. Lesson number 2.
Don't be defensive. Remember that your partner sees all sides of you and can offer valuable insights into parts of you that you're not fully aware of.
The shadow. Your partner's like your shadow. And
they see all the aspects of you at all times. We're blind to our own weaknesses and our own strengths. And so our partner sees all aspects of us, and without the bias of our own sort of negative self-talk, they can give us insight into, these aspects of ourselves. And it's important not to be defensive, because they can see it from that unbiased side.
So I think that the don't be defensive part comes from the perspective of when you're having an argument or something, and your partner's calling you out on something, and we are very quick to defend ourselves, be like, no, I don't do that, or I'm not like that, or how dare you say that, you don't know me better than I know myself. Yes, it's true that we do know ourselves the best, or we should know ourselves the best, and we are the expert of our own lives.
Yeah.
So this is in no way trying to promote or condone toxic or abusive behavior where a partner controls you or acts as if that they know what's best for you, and they know more than you. This is not to condone that type of behavior, but it is to highlight that when you are in a healthy, loving partnership, your partner does know things about you that you might not know about yourself and might not see, because you are clouded by your own judgment of yourself, your own insecurities, your own baggages, and your own negative self-talk, like you said.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the most beautiful and uplifting and healing parts of being in a partnership is that you can uplift your partner and help them see their potential when they don't see it themselves.
Yes.
And so sometimes that might come across as someone calling you out, your partner calling you out, or, holding you to a really high standard. And you're like, why are you doing this? Why are you pushing me? Why are you nagging me? Why are you this? Or like, why are you saying that I'm doing this or that? Sometimes, if done in the right way, that's actually to push you to be what they see you.
They see your potential.
They see your potential, and they see that you can be better.
So yeah, this one's quite self-explanatory in a way, but it's very hard to actually act out and live by. But it is, it's all about being open to this, open and receptive to this sort of feedback and communication.
Constructive criticism.
It's constructive criticism. When done right, like Tesh was saying, their intentions are always in the right place, and their intentions are good. They are there to show you these aspects of yourself that you're too blind to see, or you're too blind to see, or you're clouded. Your judgment is clouded on your own aspects of yourself. So that's why you're working together in this way. You can see sides of your partner, and your partner can see sides of you, and that's it's like covering your own blind spots. You guys,
that's so true,
you're stronger together in that way when you are open and receptive to this sort of communication.
And I think that's why you're in a relationship. Like, I mean, for everyone's relationship is different. Everyone is in a companionship and a relationship for different reasons. But I think for us in particular, it's very much around building a life together. And so being that individual person that you are in your own right, because being in a relationship doesn't mean you lose your identity, and you should never lose your identity in a relationship. And that can happen. And I think that's probably one of our points as well, around how can you maintain your own sense of individuality within a relationship. Mm-hmm. And that's very important. But also there is that healthy level of like, I don't want to say codependency, but I don't know what the proper term is, like that healthy level of codependency, I'm just going to say for lack of a better word, where collaboration, I guess. Collaboration, like you want this relationship to be active. You want to both be actively involved in each other's lives as individuals, and not in a way that you're controlling the other person, but that you're always there to...
You're in their corner.
You're holding them to a high standard. You want them to see their potential. You don't want them to fail and fall and not believe in themselves. And so, so I think that sometimes that means that someone's going to call you out if you're not doing that.
Yeah.
And that
because they see your behavior patterns too.
They see your behavior patterns that we don't. We don't see our own behavior patterns. We genuinely don't. And that's why I always say to you, like, can you fucking call me out when I'm doing this shit? Because I want to be called out. Like, I want to know when I'm behaving shittily. Like, I want to know.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, in lots of relationships, people don't want to be called out. So that's number one step. The number one step is being willing to be called out.
Yeah. Being open to receiving that.
Open to receiving. I'm like, you have to call me out when I'm being a fucking cunt. Like, you have to.
Being a cunt.
You have to, because like I have a lot of baggage. I feel like I have a lot of emotional baggage that I do bring into this relationship, and I want to heal through that, and I don't want you to have to put up with it. And I see it for what it is, and I don't want to continue those patterns. So I want you to call me out. And what I'm learning is I wrote that one because I get defensive. And I don't want to be defensive. I think for a lot of people who have emotional baggage, or people who maybe didn't grow up in the most emotionally safe environments, we take criticism as a reflection of our worth, I think is the biggest thing. And I think the way to heal through that is to reframe that as, if my partner's calling me out or telling me something that I've done wrong, that doesn't mean they don't love me. That doesn't mean I'm a horrible person across the board. That doesn't mean I'm a terrible partner. You know how like Desi mums are like, okay, well, I guess I should just kill myself then. Like I'm a horrible mother and I'm a piece of shit and I've never done anything right. They take all of that on their identity, and that's not true. So being able to separate that criticism as just criticism for that particular behavior, and not as an overall reflection of you as a person, is the biggest mindset shift I think that I'm still learning, and I think so many of us are still learning, and that's okay. It's never going to be fully learnt. It's a process.
I think
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think if your partner is giving you this criticism, or I think if you're receiving these messages from your partner, that you should see that as a good sign, as long as it's not, like we're saying, controlling or anything like that. Or abusive. If they're giving you this sort of constructive criticism and they're communicating this with you, this is a good sign. Like, it's a good thing. you want them to do that and to trust, to like feel safe enough to tell you these things and to trust that you're going to work on these things because they're communicating their needs in the relationship when they say this.
Exactly.
So I think it's very important to acknowledge that and to know that it's a good thing when they're saying these things, like to not be defensive and think that they're attacking you. They're trying to communicate their needs and how they want this relationship to be and to improve.
Yeah, and I think that's a really, really good point when you mentioned about safety. Like, they feel safe enough to come to you to call you out. Like, that's scary to go to someone and be like, hey, by the way, this is what you're doing wrong. Because obviously you're not going to do it that way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it depends on, like, obviously do it with respect, do it with humility, do it with love and care and genuine care for your partner. Yeah, I think that's really good.
Yeah.
Okay. Lesson number 3. There is no right person. There is only willingness and commitment to make it right with your partner.
Hanji.
Do you believe in soulmates?
Yes.
Okay, elaborate.
Okay. Soulmates, I felt like that was a trap question about the right person and soulmates. I think your soulmates kind of ties back to me, at least, similar to this sort of having very shared core values. A soulmate is someone that you're sort of I think of like being intertwined. That's your soulmates. That's you're connected at the soul, at the center of yourself. You're both one. That's how I think of a soulmate.
Yeah, me too.
And so to be that way is to share what is ultimately like the main components of yourself, which are your core values and who you are as a person. You share those things. So you're compatible in that way with your soulmate. You get along to the highest degree.
But what my question was is like, do you believe that soulmates, there is someone out there for you who is your one true soulmate?
Well, see, no,
that God has placed.
No, I don't believe that. I think there's lots of people that could be your. I think there's soulmates, but I don't attribute it to being the one and only person. I think that there's lots of people in the world that you could be very compatible with. There's lots of soulmates. There's lots of souls in the world. I think there's not just one in the billions and billions. There are multiple. And the thing is, you are very unique as a person. There is not out of those 7 to 8 billion souls, your soul is not an exact copy of any of them. So to say that there's someone out there that's the exact copy of you, that's your soulmate, I don't think that's true. But
does your soulmate need to be an exact copy of you?
No, this is my next point.
Okay.
So that's why I think soulmates are real, but I think maybe my definition is not the exact one that is. I don't think my definition is correct because my definition is. Why are you looking at me like that?
What do you mean? My definition is not correct.
Because you're saying, do you think soulmates exist? And I said yes, and then you said, well, how about this? Because then I think your understanding of and the internet, if you say what's a soulmate, that's the one person for you. Well, I think soulmates exist, but I don't think there's a one person for you. So I'm saying my definition is not correct to the definition that may exist when you Google the word.
So I wouldn't say it's correct. It says, what's your interpretation?
My interpretation of soulmates is that there are lots of people who
could potentially be a soulmate.
Yeah, lots of potential soulmates. What makes them your soulmate is when you meet them and you work on your relationship together and you've worked on it and then your souls, when you meet, okay, sorry that this is so convoluted, but it's a very complex question shut up. It's a very complex question you've thrown onto me, and that's why I linked it you should have just answered it. That's why I linked it to the first sort of core values thing. But what I'm trying to say is that there's lots of people who can be your soulmate, but when you meet this person who is your potential soulmate, and if you imagine your souls are like a key and a lock, they're never, right from the start, they don't just go in together and work and it's everything's hunky-dory amazing from the start. No, you have to work on it. And as you work on it and grow together as a couple, your souls then become interlinked and your souls have soulmated and they're the same as each other, and they mend, they mold together. So that is my understanding of soulmates.
So what you're essentially saying is that you create that soul connection with someone through the willingness and commitment to make it work with the person that you've chosen.
Yes.
Correct. That's what I think.
You had all that time to think of that perfectly crafted answer.
I had my answer when I asked you.
I
had my answer when I asked you the question about soulmates. Do I believe in soulmates? Yes, but I believe that you create your own soulmate, and I believe exactly
what I
the
said.
same that you believe. You weren't saying it though. You took forever to say that.
Because it was hard.
Okay, I believe the exact same thing, and I believe that there's probably potentially thousands of soulmates out there for you. If you found someone and you're both willing to make it work, that person is your soulmate. If it works out, amazing. If it doesn't work out for whatever reason, that doesn't mean that that person was wrong for you. That just means maybe you both weren't willing to come to the table.
Well, maybe that is what's wrong, though. And that's
Yeah.
not a bad thing to that person wasn't the right fit for you. Maybe they weren't your soulmate. Maybe because it didn't work out.
I think
Your
that's right, too.
soulmates are always, like, perpetually
Yes.
a potential thing until they aren't, until they're your soulmate.
I think
So
that's
you can
right.
meet someone and this is your potential soulmate. And then you work on a relationship and you guys work at it, but it just doesn't work out. Then they weren't your soulmate.
I think that's a really good point. Everyone's a potential soulmate.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's a potential soulmate until they're not.
Mm-hmm.
And what I sort of want to make a comment on is things that I hear a lot about people.
Speak your truth, queen.
They're not willing to make it work with the person. They just think that things should just naturally fall into place. And then people aren't willing to work. Both people, I'm not saying that one person or the other, but both people aren't willing to make that work with the partner. And then they break up. And that person could very well have been their soulmate. But both of them weren't willing to show up and work through that.
Yeah.
And so I think that maybe people give up too soon because they think something better
Is
is
gonna come
waiting
along.
for them
Yeah.
on the other side. They're like, this person is just wrong. There's someone better where everything will just naturally fall into place.
There is no one relationship that exists that does not involve work. You might want everything to fall in place and just to be easy. And maybe it is like that at the start. But guess what? You're going to hit a point where there's some work required. And that's just the nature of relationships. And that's what really makes your relationship strong. If you have a relationship where there is never any friction and you never have to work through things and never have to like try and sort of come to a compromise with each other or something like that, the moment you hit one of those things, it's going to be so difficult for you.
Destructive.
So destructive.
Things
So-
can't be in the honeymoon phase. You can't
Forever.
remain
No,
in the honeymoon
there will
phase.
there will always be some
this is-
work to be done, and that is the whole point. You know, you're building a relationship. When you build something, it requires work.
Yes,
you have to
build-
put effort
yeah.
in to build something.
But what do you-
Otherwise, what do you just standing on a foundation
What do you think
of
of
nothing?
people who say then like the right person, it will feel effortless?
Well, I think what
Or do they mean that just about the honeymoon phase then?
No, I think maybe they might mean it about the honeymoon. They might mean like when they say that they could just mean the honeymoon phase, but I think what they mean is the work. I think it's a wrong saying because the work will feel worth it. In my opinion, is a better saying. Like it's not going to feel effortless. Sometimes things are hard, but it's work that is worth doing, and it's hard work that is rewarding.
It's not that it's easy and that there's no issues and there's no arguments and there's no disagreements. It means that when there are arguments, when there are disagreements, when there are issues, you're both willing to communicate through them and you're both willing to respect one another
Yeah.
and work through those issues in an emotionally mature way. I think that's what the difference is.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Do you know what?
What?
I'm about to drop some fire.
Drop it.
Some heat that I
Drop
just
it,
thought.
drop it, drop it.
I just thought of. I was thinking just now about all these foundations and building and things like that.
Is
I
it a
was thinking
metaphor?
it's a metaphor.
Oh, yes.
Relationships
Slay.
are a journey. Okay. And if you have a journey, let's pretend you're in a car and you're trying to get somewhere. Do you know what you need to go somewhere?
Fuel.
No, you need friction.
Friction.
Your tires are not going to take you anywhere if they're frictionless.
True.
You need friction in a
Unless-
relationship to get anywhere. Sometimes you do need to fight on your journey to get somewhere.
Yeah.
Relationships and journeys
Why?
need
Why?
friction. Because I think you're going to have to hit a point where, like, you're going to hit growing pains. You're going to hit something where there's a disagreement or there's challenges,
And that's
they
what
need
tests you.
that's what tests you, and you
Yeah.
need to work through them, and that's why relationships require work. That's why there's friction in
Yeah.
things. When there's no friction in lots of situations, things can also be boring and stale. Like
And then that creates
when you're
that creates issues.
exactly. So there's a person that I follow that's really got a lot of good advice for just self-discovery.
Who's that?
And I don't remember his name, but he's on TikTok. He's really cool. He's talking about when people say, "Oh, you're such a nice guy." It's more of an insult to be a nice guy, because what they're really saying is that you don't cause issues. You don't cause any friction. You're very like agreeable. And so for those like people that are agreeable and that don't cause friction, they're usually not like, you don't really get to know those people ever, and you don't hear their opinions, and they're kind of boring. They get perceived as being boring, and like sort of they don't get remembered very well. Oh, he's a nice guy. Yeah, he's such a nice guy. That's
nice
it.
guy.
But he's not.
What does he stand for? What does he believe in? What are his opinions? What are his values? What are his interests? What are his hobbies?
Yeah.
They often don't delve into those, because people who are nice don't often know themselves, because they prioritize their life trying to make things easier for other people, to avoid conflict, to keep everything nice, easy, relaxed, calm. And
for those people, it's at the detriment of themselves. They are doing a disservice to themselves by being the nice guy.
Everyone else is benefiting from them.
Yeah, and this attributes to your relationship too. You're doing a disservice to your relationship if you are being very avoidant on working through these elements of your relationship.
Yeah. She'll be right, mate. Like, it's right. Like, let's not talk about it. Let's move on. Let's not chat about it.
And then
under the rug.
You never level up.
And then what does that do though? It also builds resentment too, because we're still human. So we're still gonna start to resent each other because you have all this unresolved baggage that you haven't worked through. Doesn't mean it's gonna go away. It's just like emotions. Like, we talk about emotions being like water. If you try and block your emotions and try and stop them from coming out, the water's not going to stop flowing. It's going to keep flowing, but it's going to come out in other ways, and it's obviously going to burst out. So you're going to have it all tightly packed up, and you've got all these band-aids on the holes, and all this pressure's building up, and then one day it's going to explode. And it's either going to be pain inflicted on self or pain inflicted on others. And so this is why expression is so important. This ties into all of these elements that you've spoken about around a person being too nice. Means that they want to be agreeable, they want to be easy, they want to be comfortable for other people. And there's this other quote where it says, do not set yourself on fire to keep others warm. And
there's so many good quotes about this.
There's so many good quotes. What's yours?
There was one about like not having any hills to die on, and like I think when you get to the end of your life and you never really threw a fuss or had any never stood for anything, and you look back at your life and it's just this plain flat field versus someone who lived a life of like standing on their passions and their beliefs, and they look back at their life and they've got all these valleys and cliffs and hills because they had hills that they died on and things that they stood for.
So much richness. It makes me think of Aaron Burr.
Oh yeah.
If you stand for nothing, Burr, what do you fall for? Ooh, who are you?
Who are you? Who's this kid? What's he gonna do?
I am not throwing away my shot. I am not throwing away my shot. Yeah, I'm just like my country. I'm young, scrappy, and hungry, and I'm not throwing away my shot. Yes, see? Even that itself is a really great metaphor. If you stand for nothing, what will you fall for? You have to stand for something. You have to be your own person. You have to have that sense of knowingness of who you are, what you stand for. And those are the people that make the biggest changes in their own lives and in others' lives.
Yep.
I think, that's a really deep conversation. We could do that forever. So that's lesson number 13. So now our final lesson is... Lesson number 4. Char. Lesson char.
Lesson char 4. Your role is not always to solve your partner's problems. It's to hold a safe and sacred space for them to express themselves.
It's giving, I'm the eldest child and I need to fix everyone's problems. And I feel like I am like that. I'm an only child, but like I'm very much a problem solver. So that's something that I've learnt and am learning, is that I don't have to always provide a solution. If someone's got an issue, sometimes all I need to do, whether this is in a relationship again or a platonic friendship, is just be that sounding board, is just to be that, just to be that sounding board, to hear them, to hold space for them to be able to express without judgment, for them to be able to express without the fear of judgment. And for me, my role in that relationship at that time is just to be there. And I think that can make a huge difference, and sometimes can actually be more helpful than the act of trying to problem solve. for me personally, I think that's been a big lesson for me because I am someone that wants to fix, I guess, or problem solve and find solutions. And I get that from my parents. So yeah, what do you think?
I think I have the same issue where when people have issues, or like when people come to me with problems that they're upset over, that my first instinct and my first reaction is to try and problem solve and like just try and deal with the problem, which has its merits, but it's really depending on the situation. I think a lot of the time people don't want to hear your suggestions to their issues. They just want to feel heard and validated that their reaction and their feelings are okay, and that it is okay to feel this way when I'm facing this sort of issue. So they're not looking for you to, because they might have solutions in their head. They might know what they need to do, or they might not, but they're coming to you for support, and it's emotional support and validation that it's okay that I'm like, is it okay that I'm crying over this? Like, is that fine? Is it okay to have this reaction? And that might be what they're looking for, sort of like not consciously, but that's what they're coming to you for support for.
Yeah, and I think probably one of the most useful things to do in this situation is to just be upfront and ask, do you need a sounding board right now, or do you want some help? Are you looking for advice, or are you just looking for support? Are you looking for advice, or are you just looking for reassurance? Do you want solutions, or do you want support right now? And I think the more that you open that line of communication with whoever you're with, partner or friend, then they will also feel heard, that they have a choice, that, oh, wow, someone's actually asked me that. What do I want? Actually, I think I just want some reassurance. I just want a hug. I just want comfort.
Yeah.
Or they'll be like, no, actually, I'm really anxious about this, and I feel like I need some advice on what I should do.
Advice, yeah.
Because it can go both ways. Sometimes someone might be looking for advice and they go to someone expecting advice, and the opposite happens, and this person's like, it's okay, I'm here for you, and they're like, fuck it, just tell me what to do, give me some advice.
Exactly.
Or vice versa. So I think that's why open communication at the end of the day is the most helpful thing. That is the most important thing. You
want to know what this person wants, and you can just ask them.
You can just like, hey,
that is okay to
actually,
just ask someone.
You can actually just ask. We don't have to assume. We don't have to
assume or try and decipher it just through their like body language and like, oh, what would they want? What do I want? Just say, you can ask them those questions.
I think that feeds into a really good point as well. It might be one of the ones on our list, I'm not sure, around don't assume anything. We as human beings, I think, assume so much, and we also just, that the typical joke about like women expecting men to know what they're thinking, and how often is it that we do that? Like, I think I still do it. And we have to get out of that habit of expecting people to know when they shouldn't know. Certain things I feel like are given, like, for example, chores around the house. You expect that person knows what they need to do and they don't need to be told. But certain things about emotionally, I'm talking emotionally, if you're going through something, you can't expect your partner to know if you haven't communicated that.
It's really hard sometimes because your assumptions can be so ingrained that you think that that's what they want and you don't need to ask. But I think that assuming things is like the number one cause of miscommunications, is that you just assume that someone wants this or doesn't want this, and then that was never communicated. There's
this short film on it. I think we recently watched it. Was it all that it was like an Indian short film?
Yeah,
and it was about the doctor or the nurse who came in, and she assumed that the wife was dead.
Yeah, and but she was just gone for a holiday or something.
Oh my god! And she assumed that the wife was dead, and this man was like, he was this older man, and he had
dementia.
He had dementia, and he missed his wife, and he had made some comment about his wife, missing his wife, or his wife not being there. But it was because the daughter and the son-in-law or something who left this carer to take care of this old man with dementia were not clear, and she didn't ask or elaborate, and she assumed that they meant that the mum had died. And so she's going into this whole day thinking that this old man's old man's wife was dead. And then she accidentally says it to him, and he spirals, and he falls over, and he's crying, and he's like,
falls to the ground.
No, though, because he's got dementia, and he misses his wife, and she gaslights the shit out of him.
Yeah.
Because he's like, my wife made me, like,
you wrote down that my wife
morning.
is dead.
Yeah. He reads her book, and it says wife is dead. He's like, what do you mean? She's like, you have dementia, you don't realize that your wife died. And he's like, no, I fucking didn't. And then she walks in the door. She comes home from the wedding, and he's like, everything's okay. And this woman is like,
Yeah.
So like, don't assume. I think the biggest thing. I don't know if that story made sense.
Yeah.
I hope I painted that picture okay.
If you've watched the show, then you will
No
get
one's
this
watched the
you will
show.
get this reference. But I don't
We'll
think anyone's
link it
watched this obscure show.
We'll link it in the bio.
Yeah. Link
Put
in bio.
subtitles on. I think assumptions are so damaging. So never assume.
If you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. You get it?
If you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. That's good.
Yeah. Thanks.
So that's
That
all.
concludes part 1.
That concludes part 1 of the lessons that we've learned in our 11-year relationship. So it was 4, and we've got another 4 to come in the next episode. I hope that was, I don't know, interesting, insightful in one way or another.
I hope you gained some sort of value
Yeah.
out of that.
And I think what we noticed is that so many of those overlap.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they do.
And ultimately comes down to you knowing yourself at your core level, knowing what your core values are, what you believe in, what you stand for, the things that you're passionate about, knowing your partners and those aligning, and then also just being able to have that willingness and commitment to show up in your relationship and be vulnerable and be authentic and be real, which is something that is very missing in a lot of relationships due to so many different reasons, you know, social expectations, cultural expectations, and roles. Thank you. Yeah, you do. I'm tired. You do the thing now. You do the log out.
बहुत शुक्रिया for tuning in to this episode. Mera hope you had good time. Mera hope had acha time.
Mera hope you like. I hope. मैं hope करता हूँ
मैं hope करता हूँ
कि तुम्हें
कि तुम्हें
मजा आया
मजा
है.
आया है.
Hope is an English word though.
And औरत hope the same. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of our Thinking Out Loud podcast. This is part 1 of a 2-part series of lessons that we've learned in our relationship. We hope you enjoyed, and we hope you learned, and we hope you tune in for the next one, because we hope to...
We hope a lot.
We really are very hopeful. My God, we hope. Oh my gosh, do we hope. We hope you tune in to the next one, so that you can learn all these great lessons from us, or not. You can just listen to them.
Or fuck off.
Yeah, or you just fucking hate us, whatever you want to do.
It's up to you, because ultimately you have free will.
And all the power in the world. That's so sensual.
Thank you so much for listening, and we cannot wait to see you at the next one. Bye!
Bye!